All right, welcome back from break. This is class 5, part 3. And now we're going to be glazing with oils again into a painting from earlier on in the class. This was done with the complementary palette of the oranges and blues. You can see I've already done some shifting in the colors here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do spot glazing, and we're going to be just warming up and slightly shifting a couple colors kind of in the focal area. And then I may introduce a little bit of transparent dark. So all of the colors that I put on my palette are opaque transparent or semi-transparent, besides the white, which is an opaque titanium white. So again, when doing glazing or color shifting, it's very important that you look to your tubes and do transparent or semi-transparent. I do know that there are some artists who will do somewhat of a glazing with opaque paint, but just know that it's going to have a lot stronger coverage over, it's going to obscure what is below. So if you're trying to preserve the detail or the brushwork that is below, you want to make sure that it's really quite transparent. I'm just grabbing some tests that I've done really quickly. To show, so this is something that you guys may want to do this week. And in fact, if this is the only thing you do this week, besides get your final painting started, is creating some charts. So again, all I do is take a ruler and a permanent marker. I write down the name of the color that I'm going to test. And then what I do is I just put the color down really thick on the left side, and then I just scrub it. I don't add any medium or anything. I just spread it thinner and thinner and thinner, and I can see what kind of coverage. Some colors, like the Indian yellow, is never opaque, but it gets really transparent. My cadmium lemon has a really good coverage when it's thick, but even when I scrub that down, even though that is an opaque color, I can make it fairly transparent when I'm just putting it on thin enough. So that's something you may want to do. I did the same experiment, and I know I shared this already in this class, with my earth colors. Not that I use very many of these, but I own them, so may as well test them. And it was fun just to see. So when I'm picking out the colors, I can look to this and decide, what, I want to use some of this, maybe some of this. The left side is like I just did here, with the thicker on the left and just scrubbing it out, getting thinner. And then on the right side is thick paint, but I'm adding white. So because the white is opaque, you can see it's not getting as transparent. But it's interesting that a thin version of Venetian red, just scrubbed out, is much, much warmer than if I try to lighten it with white, right? So you can see those changes. This is antique earth green. And what a difference it makes when you add white to it. It becomes much grayer and cooler. And in fact, all of the colors are much cooler when I add white, besides almost this gold. This is a quinacridone gold, which is actually kind of a hard color to find, but it retains it makes it yellower when you add white, as opposed to just cooler. So that is a chart that you guys may find valuable to make. It's super easy. Just grab a piece of paper or a board or one of your canvases that you're not going to, a cheap canvas or something like that, and you can make those charts all day long. All right, so what I want to do, just grabbing some brushes really quickly here. Just kind of randomly just grabbed a bunch. what I'm going to do is I'm going to warm up this focal area a little bit more. So what I will often do is take a little bit of my quinacridone red, might touch it with a bit of Indian yellow. They're both very transparent. And I'll make kind of a bright, kind of a hot orangey color. I'm going to put this brush down so I don't have to clean it. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of my Indian yellow first. I'm just going to scrub that into the area just a little bit. I've got kind of a little bit hint of a sliver of a sun just kind of peeking out there. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this Indian yellow there. And then I'm just going to...
Do you use a medium when glazing with oils, or just not?
It's suggested, but if I'm using transparent colors, I'm using their, a lot of times when I glaze, I'm just using their staining ability. I find it to be, they dry a lot faster, they're not shiny, and I can layer into them longer. You can already see that it's quite a bit warmer back there all of a sudden. Now I can go back to this quinacridone and Indian yellow color. And I'm just going to use little bits of that along the periphery of this tree. To kind of warm that up. Wipe my brush clean a little bit. I'm going to take a tiny bit of that, just the straight quinacridone at this point. I'm going to do just a band. They're not adding a lot of paint, just a little bit. I can add a bit of Gamsol if I want to thin that out. Again, back to the paper towel. I'm just gonna
Michael, do you always use a wood palette instead of, or wood canvas instead of the canvas? Do you always paint on wood?
ideally, I do own some canvases, and for one of my galleries, they actually prefer canvas. But I don't personally prefer canvas. So you see how my focal area was really kind of a lot cooler before? I don't mean cool in a cool way. I meant cool in a temperature way. And so I'm just kind of coming through and warming up the periphery where the light's kind of wrapping around, sneaking through maybe some of these sky holes.
So you're using Indian yellow. What is the left yellow? Like the lightest
That would be
yellow?
a Hansa yellow light.
Okay, thank you.
It's like a cadmium yellow light, but it's much more transparent.
Right, thank you.
Yep, no, good question. Thank you. I should have, and I will go through those colors here in just a bit. But what I like is, again, with oils versus the acrylics, is I've got this working time. I could be adding a bit of medium to it, but I'm really just letting it kind of just stain some of those paints. Let's go ahead and bring some of this warmth down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the light hugging these trees back here. So you see how this whole line of trees is really cool? Well, the light's coming from behind them at this angle. So I'm just gonna go ahead and play that up a little bit and just warm up this side of the trees.
This is perfect for finishing my gorge painting, I'll tell you that.
Oh, well, good. Yeah, because
Absolutely perfect.
a lot of times, and it makes kind of a nice harmony because I'm just taking, little bits. The colors aren't so strong. Do you guys see that little bit of warmth all of a sudden on these sides of the trees?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I swear that is a big reason people buy my paintings so much, is that little hint of warmth and glow. And I bet you, for a lot of you, you're like, finally, this is what I paid for this class for. This is why I signed up. Finally, I'm getting the secrets. But it really is a matter of cool, warm, dull, bright, it's all these things playing together that give us this kind of somewhat naturalistic feel of warmth, this natural feeling of glow, this natural contrast.
Was the underpainting acrylic?
I don't. No. This whole painting is oil on oil on oil. Yeah, this is one of the wipe away paintings, Michelle, that we did in the mentorship group thing way back. And again, I just kind of like having some of those wipe away paintings or whatever, just so I can just keep experimenting and keep trying things. I took this kind of brownish wipe away painting and building up the design and the values, but never quite loved it. Sat around for a while in the studio, and then I decided I could use it as the example of split complementary colors, and showed you that. And now I'm coming back in with glazing over the top of that. So do you guys see that? How much more impactful all of a sudden the focal area is? It's just, there's no way anybody's gonna, if you just said, even to a non-artist, what's the focal point? They'd be like, there.
It's beautiful.
It is.
Yeah.
And I could just softly brush into it and alter it and change it and play with, could say, you know what, I actually want this light that's hitting here let's have it come across the field a little further. I don't have much paint on the brush, so I'm just barely warming it up.
You can do small areas like that with acrylic. You don't have to paint the whole thing.
Oh yeah, no, totally, yeah. Same rules apply, 100%.
Because this is what I do.
So I've got this warm light on this tree, so I'm going to want to hint at that in my reflections, which will make a nice, see, all of a sudden I went from purple to yellow. Now I've got that pink transition all of a sudden. And it hopefully just feels a little more subtle, a little more interesting. One of my favorite tricks. So just take little hints of this quinacridone or whatever red I want to use, and I just hug some of the edges. Watch this transition in here between the dark and the light. I'm just gonna introduce little hints of warmth.
That's wow factor.
Isn't
Wow.
that interesting?
Yeah.
Let's bring a little bit of that warmth into here. So because it's yellow and blue, where I add red to the yellow, it goes orange. Where I add red to the blue, it goes purple. So all of a sudden what I'm doing is I'm just creating transitions. Right? The red between yellow and, or between orange and blue, red is that transition color. It could be yellow. I could have gone with the greens. So this is feeling ultra blue all of a sudden, just sitting out there because I went above and or below and above with the warms. Feels a little like it's really, it looks stupid. It's just standing out too much. So I'm just going to put a tiny bit on this brush. I'm getting just a tiny bit, and I'm just going to have it radiate out. I'm going to have it a little redder, closer to the sun. And then as the paint comes off, watch. It'll get bluer, but it won't be that obnoxious glowy blue that it was before. You see how all of a sudden that harmonized with the background?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do the same. The light's coming through. It's coming around some of these trunks. Let's warm them up a little bit. Even warm up some of the tops of these trees if I want. Like some of this foliage is somewhat transparent.
Right.
It's not really transparent. You see how all of a sudden just warming that up creates a bit of a transition from that dark tree.
You're bringing it to life.
What it is it's not stark differences. Now I'm creating a subtle, hopefully, transition. So you don't only have to do to warm it up. So I actually grabbed a little bit of a chromatic black right here. Chromatic black is one of the few transparent blacks. So if there were areas in this painting that I wanted to darken, but I do want to retain the texture. So let's look into this area here. So I want to retain some of this transition, but let's just pretend I want it darker. Chromatic black is one of your best options if you want a really strong, fast. So you can see if I put it on even thick at all, it's almost opaque, right?
Right.
But if I fan it out, all of a sudden those colors underneath, or those values underneath, should start to reveal themselves, but just darker. I think this is something that, again, so many oil painters just don't utilize the transparency of paint. If I feel like, you know what, that got a little more opaque than I wanted, I just wanted to darken it, again, I can just take my paper towel and all of a sudden some of those lighter values will start to reveal themselves, but I have in fact darkened them. So all of a sudden I'm hoping these darks are starting to come forward. Let's use that in our rocks here, which are very, very dark, right? These are kind of like pebbles or, you know, stones on the beach here. I can just kind of pick out a couple of shadows and all of a sudden give them a whole, and I could mix blue with this. I could mix red. Let's mix a little red and blue, make it a little bit purple in the dark. I can just look to the structure of those rocks, those river stones. And you see how they all of a sudden just start to optically feel like they're coming closer to us?
Yeah.
Extreme darks will come forward. Also, if I warm them up a little bit, I could even add a little bit of a hot red into it. I don't want it to be red, but I want to warm up my darks. All of a sudden, I can use that to help bring. You see how much more depth there is all of a sudden having these darks up front?
Yeah.
And it gets
Yeah.
lighter and lighter.
Sometimes you get colors down in there and just because they're very lightly glazed there, you have all different colors in there, but they don't pop out, say in their colors, they just make it more interesting.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly right. Because all of this, like if you just pointed to this and said, you know, what color is that? Baby's like, dark. You know, but it's got red in there, it's got blue in there, it's got, you know, it's got all these beautiful transition. And I will tell you what, I'm willing to give, you know, beginner painters so much leeway and freedom, but when I see advanced painters not utilizing and finding the beauty and the color and the all the interesting things that are happening in shadows, it makes me sad. I love Russian paintings, but I think that Russians' overuse of actually just black in their shadows, they're just missing so many opportunities. Not all of them, just some of them. It was kind of a stylistic thing, but just know that within your shadows, there's an abundance of color. The viewer is not going to notice it in the first 5, 10, 15 seconds, but they're sure going to be the people that are actually willing to spend a little time and investigate your painting a little bit deeper and look at it a little, you know, are really going to be rewarded. All right, you guys see that then? How much
Yes.
warmer this is and how we kind of harmonized it across the board here. How we brought some of that warmth to hug the edges a little bit. And then by bringing some of these darks into the foreground and even warming them up just a touch, which maybe isn't the greatest idea since our background is so warm, but it still helps us to read it as perspective and depth. Isn't that interesting?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's
So
beautiful.
it's like an almost good painting, and I mean, it still might not be great,
It is.
but
It is.
it's much more interesting.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
And one
definitely.
of my favorite parts is this transition right here.
Yeah, that looks really
It was
good.
just blue, yellow. And now it's got this little band of light around it.
Yeah, the trees have a lot of depth where you can, it looks like they're curving, you know, there's, yeah.
Right, we want to give them form, and we'll be talking a lot about that in the painting trees class, is how to give form, that it's not just a dark and a light, it's got to have a bending of light, color, temperature, and how do we do that with brushwork? Because yeah, I didn't even really explore too much brushwork in this painting, but
Clever.
I think the diffused light just below the sun on the mountain range there is just absolutely beautiful.
Mhm.
and
And,
to tell you the truth,
I like
That's
that little
probably
hint
what will
in
sell
between the
this.
trees.
yep,
that's probably what will sell this painting, is that little spot there.
Mhm.
Before I put it down, I want to do just a couple little more. And I don't put a whole lot of paint on there. I'm dabbing it off my brush, just kind of mixing it into the ferrule or into the bristles. And I'm just going to warm it up. So it's interesting, the beginning of my painting, you know, it could take me 15 minutes just to design my values and my structure. And I can work to just kind of finesse the end of it for hours, where I'm just slowly tweaking colors and, you know, just going, okay, well, that's a little too strong there. Let's knock it back a little bit with the Q-tip. This band of light is too strong. I just want it to be sitting on the trunk. But it's this is the magic part for me. This is where, you know, I take an okay painting, hopefully, and make it something that people will stop at, you know, in the gallery and look at. All right.
Okay.
A lot different. Just
Yeah.
add a little bit of Indian yellow and quinacridone red and a bit of the transparent chromatic black. It's actually just called chromatic black. But what I like about the chromatic black is it's not, it doesn't lean too blue and it's not opaque. I keep like looking at the monitor and seeing things. So I'm just gonna rub in, see these stripes here. Just gonna make them a little less regular. And this is at the point in the painting where if I were by myself in the studio, I would be doing a couple dabs, stepping back, maybe sitting down on the bench in the back of the studio and just observing it, like, okay, that's doing that. So what's this doing? Like, should I bring some of these shadows? See these cast shadows now? How we played up the light kind of coming through these trees? I can actually take, and I'm gonna add a little bit of black to the base of each one of these. Now what I'm going to do is just drag that in the same direction.
At what point do you tell yourself you just have to stop and stop
Never.
messing with it? Oh, okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay.
Whenever I see something that I can fix, I'll try to fix it if I can make it better. What hurts my feelings the most is when I let a painting go before I feel like I'm done improving it.
Mm.
People ask the same question just in a different way. How do you know when you're done? And it is when you're starting to do more damage than good. But that might just mean done for that day. Like I just don't know where I'm going. Let's get back to our lights to see this angle here. See this blue right here?
Mhm.
See how that doesn't make sense to the light? So I'm just going to go ahead and warm that up just a touch. And then now I'll have to add probably a touch of white. We're just changing that angle to be the same as all the others a little bit.
Beautiful.
Better, yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Beautiful.
Bring the camera back because I'm going to change images.
Michael,
It's
there's kind of a bright blue spot next to the dark shadow.
Line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right there. Mhm.
you talking about.
Well, There you go.
Yes, exactly. And that is that sigh that we just heard, whoever did that, that's my like body, how I know when things are right or wrong, is I literally just feel my heart rate going up when I'm looking into certain areas. Like, yeah, something's wrong. What is it? Right? So you begin to trust your literal physicality when you're painting. Like, does this feel right? Because there's times where I don't know what's wrong. I mean, again, that wave painting that we started off the class with is, I know something's not working. I had a couple of different ideas, but until I get that, I'm not going to move forward with color. And in this case, I don't know if the painting's done until I stop looking into areas. Better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are, I know that the darks are shiny right now because they are a little more, I've put some areas on a little more opaquely. So when those dry, they'll dry a little more matte. And then when I come through and varnish it, then it'll equalize the shine as well. That is one of the annoying parts of oil paints, is having certain areas shiny, certain areas not shiny. So I'm going to go ahead and save this one. This was the painting that I wanted to get to.
It's so pretty though.
Wow.
So nice.
For those of you, but this will be great, because for those of you who want to join me, you can
Wow.
decide if you would like to do an underpainting. Let me turn the light back on. Get this painting out of the way. Goodbye painting. And what I could do too, I mean, I could glaze in or, varnish in or whatever, glaze in some cooler blues, some greens, whatever I wanted to, if I wanted to really bring the focus to here. But I kind of like the fact that it's all light and it just goes from really hot to cooler, but lighter. It's kind of an interesting effect that I'm experimenting with more and more. But I could easily, bring in some of the blue and just bring it across. If I wanted to, I could cool it like at an angle coming across. If I really wanted to lock in, I could bring those dark cools across here and really make this the bright spot. But right now, I'll live with it for a little bit and then I can decide later. Plus, it's on a little tiny skinny panel, so it'll have to have a frame on it. So I do know that the frame will create a dark, because I like dark frames around it. Let's talk about, before we get to the critique, which we have 10 minutes for, so you each get not 3 minutes, but 30 seconds. Just kidding. Let's talk about next week. And basically, from now till the end of class, is your final painting. So whatever it is you want to do, using whatever aspects of this color class. I used to just teach lessons all the way to the end. If you've been a student of mine, you know that, and it's, but what I found is that all of us are gravitating towards certain lessons. Some of us are really excited about the transparency versus opacity. Some of us are really excited by the split complementary. Some of us, all those things, darks and lights. So it's your opportunity to go back, review your notes or the handouts that I gave you, decide which ones, and they can be combinations of, different ones. What would you like to focus on and which image would you like to focus on? So it can be any of your references. Gail was so sweet to offer her reference. I've got about 30 or 40 of them on there. The one I'm choosing to do is this. It's a painting that I've always wanted to do. I do envision myself at some point doing it large. Because to me, this this photo is almost abstract and got this really weird, interesting, but it's all about, value shifts and going back into depth, but also this really soft, interesting, subtle color change and temperature change. So that's this is a photo I've wanted to paint for a long time. So that's why I chose this. I decided to do it as a black and white, and then I'm going to glaze in as close as I can get. I'll do that next week. But then I know that I'm going to be able to come across and paint opacally, thicker paint where I want to. So a lot of that could be in the detail in the foreground grass. I do have a black and white of it. I can use opaque paint wherever I feel like it. I mean, I may even do the sky and the water thick and opaque and have the land as my transparent, which would be a really different than I normally do, because normally the sky is my most transparent area, just because I feel it feels more natural, because again, the light is going through the transparent paint, hitting the white of the canvas, bouncing. So that feels like this, right? It feels glowy. It feels like how we know the sky to exist. So that's my goal, is to do transparent glazes, hopefully locking in these colors as nicely as possible, with the full knowledge that I will be coming through. And I would really like to have some nice texture and interesting, subtleties, but color in the foreground. Yeah. Any questions about the final assignment, what you guys are going to be doing starting, as soon as you start painting after this class?
No, Michael, I have a question. The painting that we're looking at now, first of all, it's stunning. Was that just the chromatic black and white that you used?
Yep, I just used strong black, I believe is what the color was called. I was going to mix blue into my black and make that transition, but I just figured it'll be very easy to just glaze in with some kind of a blue and lock that in.
I really wish you could keep that one black and white and do a different one in color.
I agree.
Yes.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, it's so
Because a lot of-
striking. It's so different and unique. It's stunning. Yep.
And a lot of people are decorating in black and white.
Exactly. It goes in any room.
I'll do another one.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's got the Ansel Adams.
because I
Yeah,
did go a little crazy on
Exactly.
detail.
That's beautiful. Crazy
Mhm.
beautiful.
What you might want to consider is just adding a really light glaze of peach or something along the back of those trees, just to suggest a little bit of color on that skyline where it meets the trees.
Yeah,
And leave
that
it
would
at
be
that.
fun.
Yeah,
What
Just leave
color
it
did
at
you
that.
say?
like a peach, a really light
Okay, okay.
peach,
Like
All
that.
right, I got it.
right along the tree line, and just leave it at that.
Yeah, I know my first painting that I sold out of my last show was my black and whites. And yeah, it's the only time I'd ever put just a straight black and white, because I've always been nervous. But just like I've been doing with those illuminated tone paintings where they're my underpaintings, I've always just been nervous, just like, well, that's my underpainting. But Michelle actually in the class is one of the people that talked me into this, like, leave it alone, sell it. People will want to buy it. And she was right. I've sold them faster than any of my other paintings. But I still feel like I'm cheating. Yeah, checks in the mail, Michelle. But I still feel like I'm cheating. So it's the same with this. But yeah, maybe there's a whole new, I don't know what you call these, not illuminated tones, and I guess just black and white series. I don't know.
Black and white. Black and white is beautiful. Ancient black and whites, when there was only black and white, are still just beautiful to me.
Mm-hmm.
Ansel
It's
Adams.
it's your Ansel Adams style.
Yep.
Yes,
Bingo.
good point.
And designers today are using green as the new color for this year. All shades of green, like dull down greens, and they're using black and white images on the walls.
Ooh, that'd be pretty, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful.
All right, do we need a break before critique, or are you guys good?
Oh, I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good. I have to leave in about 35 minutes, so I'm good.
I'm good and the dog's asleep, so let's go.
All right, I'm gonna stop